Hello, everybody. Let me stop. That. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Facility Design. I just wanted to apologize for not being able to get this out earlier. As maybe you can hear from my voice a little bit, I believe I might have had COVID and maybe a slight case of pneumonia last week, and I just kind of set me back for the week. So, anyways, moving on. So, what we will be doing as our lesson plan going forward is that I will be introducing here this week the back of house design. So a lot of the components about how we look at back of house and what kind of different aspects we need to think about, as well as I will introduce and take a look at the back of house design assignment. Now, since I'm just giving it out this week, I will allow for 2 weeks as of Sunday. So it won't be due until week 12. So that'd be the same week as your midterm. So just to give you an idea, and then also, so this upcoming week is where we're going to have our lunch and our tour. For those of you who can't make it, which I totally understand, I will do a little bit of a briefing on what we may have went over, as well as a little bit of a tour of the GDR, the Georgian dining room, front of house, back house, things like that. And I will go over the assignment with you in more detail then. So in the meantime, let's take a look at back house design and in regards to what are the different things that we should be looking at. So, just like the front of house, there is a fairly standard layout for a lot of kitchens. There might be some changes as far as the amount of space each area will get, but for the most part, all kitchens have a requirement of a bunch of different areas. So we'll go through some of the back house design concepts, preparation and pre-preparation, dishwashing, receiving, storage, things like that, and go through all the different areas that make up what a back of house consists of. And then we'll get into more detail about like what the hot line is, as they often call it, which is really where heat is applied for the last time to your food. So a couple of relationship patterns that we had to think about. First of all is raw food. So with the back of house, it's food and it's people, and it's not customers, but employees. So when you think about raw food, it comes in the back door. It comes in that receiving area that we have spoken about. From that receiving area, it needs to go to storage. So this storage can be dry storage. So that could be for a lot of your grains and your canned goods, spices, things like that. But it can also go into your refrigerated units, which could be either a fridge or freezer. So all of those have to be in somewhat close spatial relation, so located close to each other. So from the back of house receiving area into that storage, and then into what we call as a pre-preparation area. So we'll go into more detail about what they could look like, but this is really where we process a lot of the raw goods that we get. The final preparation area will be where we, as I mentioned, we apply heat for the last time, or we plate it for the last time, and then right into service where it goes out to the customer, the patient, whatever that might be. So in the pre-preparation area it's a central ingredient area. It's close to fridges. It's close to your final prep. It mainly deals with produce, vegetables, and dry mixes, right? So we're doing a lot of different bases. We're doing a lot of larger stock recipes, not so much individual. We might be dealing with some proteins. It really depends on the kind of place you are. Some larger places will bring in full chickens, full sides of beef, and process them. But for the most part, it's spicing and preparing to cook for that final time. What you'll see in these areas are usually tables, 30 to 36 inches high. 30 inches is your standard desk height. 36 inches is your standard kind of like a working space. Your high top tables are usually 42 inches high in a bar area. Regular tables are 30, so that 36 is kind of right in between there. And it's really where people can do a lot more working more successfully because it's not as hard on their back. We also look at 6 to 8 foot long tables. So again, lots of space, lots of areas for cutting boards. A lower table is ideal, and then lots of different waste disposals in those areas, and modular or flexible, so you can move those around. So this might give you a little better of an idea. This is a very small prep area, so it's 13 feet by 17 feet. And what you basically see is 4 or 5 different pieces of equipment that they could be using, as well as some work table space and 2 different sets of sinks. Now, it is important to understand a few things when we look at this space. First of all, this is quite small. There is working area, but then you have to understand in most kitchens, the hot line, or where we plate and cook all of our food, that's also a whole working area outside of those dinner meal times. So you also can double up with that. Here we're looking at steam jackets for maybe boiling different pastas, al dente pastas, could be different soups, tilting skillets, you could be frying off tomatoes, maybe some convection ovens, par baking some things, and then some mixers and food choppers. Again, a lot of processing. You'll see a couple sinks. One should always be for hand washing, and then also there is that double sink, which is a thawing sink. And then you get a little bit of room to move around. This here just give you an idea of some of our human engineered workspaces. So if any of you have any back of house experience or kitchen experience, what we understand is that it's a factory space of 1 or 2 people in some of these situations, and I think we've all been to a Subway, or we've all been to kind of one of those places that prepare sandwiches for you, and you will notice that they are very, very particular on how they separate all their ingredients and where they place them. Because really what they're trying to do is that this person here has a 6-foot radius, a reach with your arms, and they are able to access all the different things. So they take their salad bowls and the sheet pans and put it down, toss the salad, put the finished salads on the portable cart, and away they go. And they can make many, many, many different salad portions here in a fairly quick time because everything's in front of them. So it's just really important to understand it's more than just the layout of where the equipment goes, but rather within the equipment, how we set it up. This one here will give you an idea of the work surface height. So as I mentioned, 30 to 36 inches, is sometimes where that work surface height can typically be, and we can raise that up. Basically, the heavier work that you have to do and the more strength that's required, you want it a little bit lower. You get a little bit more of a better torque. And then as you do more precision work, note keeping, recipe reading, you want that higher up to your face. So a couple things to consider when we go through the human engineering, so looking at efficient workspaces, is how many people would be working in that space. And you want to look at minimums and maximums, because on a Friday night at a busy restaurant or Saturday night, you might have 7 people in a kitchen. On a Monday afternoon, you might have 2. So can you still kind of set that area up that you can have 7 and they still have room to work, but the 2, they're not running around too much. You'll look at the amount and different types of equipment and the clearance required for equipment doors. So this could be some of the pull-out, excuse me. This could be some of the pull-out drawers in a lot of the different refrigerated units. This could be your oven doors, how they open up. These are all things that often are quite dangerous because it is a very hot area with knives and open flame equipment. So you just got to be really careful that when these things do open, that you are still allowing enough room for people to walk back and forth. And the next one is adequate aisle space. So this will really give you an idea as you start developing your kitchens. It gives you a little bit of a breakdown of some of the requirements that are needed for some of these working spaces. So the first 4 are just kind of equipment based. So it's either single or double aisle. I like to think that in a kitchen, in a busy kitchen, you should always do a double aisle. Just because you might be standing there and working in front of yourselves, but you want somebody to be able to walk behind you. So a double aisle with limited equipment is good. Double aisle with protruding equipment is great. So that could be someone can still reach down, open up a drawer, and someone still walk behind you. That's fantastic. So 6 feet kind of at that maximum. As we always talk in design, though, for every foot that is inefficiently used, we pay money. So for every square foot, You know, typically it's how most places are leased or rented. So you have to keep that in mind. And then aisles with little traffic or major traffic, still like similar, anywhere from 4 feet to 6 feet. But this could be your moving areas in and around your kitchen, around that hotline, around that main meal preparation area. A couple things we have to understand is that within a kitchen, it can get very humid and it can get very hot. So we need ventilation hoods. So ventilation hoods are often, well, they're required by law. It's a safety concern, but anything that has open flame or is cooking oily substance. So if you have even if you have a convection oven that's closed in, if you are cooking pizzas in it, as an example, and there's proteins on there, so it could be a pepperoni pizza, you would still have to have that underneath a hood vent. And I'll show you what those look like. And then also when it comes to humidity, as the dish room as an example, you are washing lots of dishes at a very hot temperature and quite quickly, and you're opening and closing that dish area. So it can make your employees feel quite uncomfortable or create slick floors. You need good ventilation in that particular area. And also the walls and the units and everything that you've used in that should be moisture resistant. So this gives you an idea of just those hood vents that we spoke about. As you can see, everything here with an open flame. These are all open flames, fryers, saute, flat tops, stove tops. They are all under these vents. Now, the tough thing about this is that this is not flexible. It is not modular. You cannot move these usually once you install them. And when you're first opening up a kitchen, you really don't know the size exactly that you need. So it's often that you don't put in enough or you put in too much and you don't require that much space. They're about $2,500 a foot. And that's not the installation, that's just the cost of them. So when you think about it, if you're doing 10 feet, it's $25,000 and you haven't invested into a piece of cooking equipment yet. So this goes first. This when you do your design, you always have to think, okay, where is my hot line going to be in all my main cooking areas? And it's not so much the stainless steel, but it's also the suppression systems. And I don't know if you can see it, but they're running all there. Those are quite expensive as well. So then we start into our preparation area, and or the front line, the main line, the hot line. These are all words, they're all synonymous. It's the main cooking area. It's the hub of the kitchen. And as we mentioned, it's where everything needs to be under these hood vents. And you have a lot of hot and cold holding tables. So these are things that some of these things we can cook off in advance. So this could be twice baked potatoes or mashed potatoes, French fries, steamed vegetables, sauces. Often it's a lot of sauces and toppers. These could be all held hot. And then the cold holding table, this could be all your ingredients, your garnishes, things like that. So the equipment needs to be logical and safe. Here is just, gives you an idea of what this hotline is. Now, as you can see, the only thing I really don't like about this, it's tight. Like it's quite tight, like two people walking back and forth. Maybe this is 4 feet, but as you can see here, this oven door opens up. All of these are refrigerated doors. They will slide open. These are oven doors. They open up. I don't know what exactly is in the back there, but I think for the most part, a lot of these things are opening up, which will only allow you for a single person to walk back and forth. It's doable. I'm sure it works, but it is quite tight. And for your own idea, this is those cold holding tables, or this one's actually a hot holding table. These are the cold holding tables here. Looks like a little toaster oven. And then they also have these heat lamps. So once they prep and prepare a dish, then they put it up under these heat lamps to keep hot until your service staff can run them out. Now, I really like this commercial kitchen layout, really only because it gives you an idea of what a small or slow business looks like versus high volume. So here you can see it is basically just a single line, like a rectangle. You can have L kitchens, you can have separate areas. often what you would see is that there might be a hot line and a cold line, and the cold line being desserts and cold salads. So they don't need the hood vents, they don't need any of that, and you kind of remove them. So you'll often see that in restaurants, commercial specifically, where they've separated those. This one here is all in the same one. So you'll see we have an appetizers and salad station with, I'm assuming this is going to be a cold holding station and all their different ingredients as they need. And they have the ovens and deep fryers, which most appetizers will use most. And then we have an assembly station. So this is plating for the final time. I'm going to assume that this is probably a hot holding area. So this could be your final starch and veg, as well as sauces. And then you have your broiler or your grill for a lot of your proteins, and then another assembler station with all your different saute and pasta cookers. So for all your different dishes in that way, same thing, probably hot sauces in here, as well as some different items. Now, you can staff it for 7, and it tells you it's two people on the appetizers, 2 assembling, 1 broiler, and 2 working on sautés, or at 3 at a very normal business is 1 app, 1 assembler, 1 saute. And they can go back and forth, right? So the person that's assembling could also work on the broiler, and the person that's doing the appetizers is also running the ovens and deep fryers. You can get an idea exactly how this works, and just gives you a good, this is probably 10 to 15% of the entire kitchen. I think I'm going to sneeze. It's probably about 10 to 15% of the entire kitchen. And I'm back, I'm sorry. So 10 to 15% of the entire kitchen, although this is like at least 50% of the entire cost of the kitchen. So it really matters where you put your money. Now, looking at this appetizer and salad station, I just want you to keep an eye on that, because when you look at it, these are some of the different ways that you can set them up. So depending on what you're working with. So let's say it's a pizza bar area, right? So you're just making pizzas. So you'll probably have a full-size thing of cheese and a lot of different half sizes of different sauces, because we don't just use barbecue or tomato, but it could be barbecue and other things. And then you might have a bunch of different smaller areas that has your pepperoni and your chicken and your bacon and your ham, and then your onions and green onions and, you know, all your different peppers and vegetables and all those kind of things. And you will just, as you work, this is very easy to do. And it's something that's not done nearly enough, is that you should just kind of record how many times you are emptying any of these things and refilling them. And then if you're just emptying them way too often throughout a shift, then you need to go bigger. And if you never have to empty them throughout a shift, then either they're perfect size or they're too big. So these are all very manipulable. You can change them out, and the small thing, and what people don't realize, is that you make money by being efficient. And if I cut off 10, 15, 20 seconds from someone making a pizza because they don't have to go to the back fridge and refill the pepperoni over and over again, then I'm just making more money. Things are going out faster. I'm not worried about it. The customer's happier. The employee isn't worked as hard. It just makes sense. And it's small things like just changing out the storage size. Then just this gives you a little L kitchen, just similar, just nothing really big here, but you can always look to it, get an idea. Good thing about this is they are showing some of their different measurements, which is kind of nice. And they even have the overhead fume hood. So that's the what I talked about, and how it kind of overhangs a little bit over all of the different equipment. Steam table, cook's table, sinks, stuff like that. And then you'll see kitchens like this, this is really more so like a showcase kitchen, or this is a learning kitchen. So at Georgian College, you might see, not in the restaurant one that we are redesigning, but this one right here, we have a lot of kitchens that kind of give you like a bunch of individual workspaces. So a kitchen like this, this could be cooking lessons and date nights where couples come in and learn how to cook with each other and things like that. And it kind of looks quite commercial, looks nice. It looks like you're willing to pay for it. Most professional kitchens look much more used and not as pretty. Okay, so a couple things that you just have to understand. So when we think about safety, we think of cross-contamination. That's a huge one. Sanitary food handling and foodborne illnesses. So when you are designing, ensuring that everything is nice and well lit. Try to prevent employee injuries by providing safe work environments. So some of the things that we've talked about is the correct flooring, non-slip areas, nice and bright. Limit the corners that people are going to have to move around, which is why you see all those hot lines in straight lines as opposed to L's, because usually what happens is the more corners you have, the more risk of injury and cross-contamination. And then design can also help avoid and contain and suppress different uncontrolled fires. So when we think about efficiency, and I went too far, labor, between 25 and 40% of all of your costs. It's probably nearing more than 40 for some people, depending on just kind of the labor environment right now. So when you're thinking about 40% of everything you do, ensuring that you are efficient. If you can take that 40 and move it down to 35, or take that 35 and move it down to 30, save 5 or 10 extra percent. The Keg is about a $9 million restaurant. So if you save 10%, you just saved $900,000. And that could be based on design, or just design and procedures that you kind of look at, you follow, and you're always kind of staying on top of. So it can reduce labor requirements, expenses, and just really strengthen your bottom line, as it says. So we look at different ease of sanitation and materials. Things you need to understand is that it should be easy to clean. Convenience is king. I've said it a million times. I say it to all my students, if something is not convenient, people don't want to do it. So you have to ensure that things are convenient. So if it's easy to clean, it will be cleaned. If it's difficult, you don't allow enough area. I can't bend over and clean out. I can't sweep under the equipment because I don't have enough room, and the broom handle keeps hitting the other side of the equipment. Like little small things like that. So ensuring that everything is nice and clean also really helps with our contamination protocols as well. As far as supervision is concerned, I hate to say it, but theft is a real thing in all kitchens, and there's some kind of theft that we don't care about nearly as much, such as, if a cook has a bite to eat behind the line. They're working with food all day. A good chef should be tasting the things that he creates. If his hand is going in the fry bowl, or, they made an extra steak sandwich, it's not the end of the world. Now, in those kitchens and in those fridges specifically, there's a lot of money. The alcohol fridge as well as the food fridge. So I've caught people taking cases of steaks and putting in their car, bottles of Dom Perignon, which is like $250 a bottle. I've caught thievery all the time. And then you have to fire them as well, which you never want to fire your good chefs because they're really hard to replace, but you can't allow for stealing either. So ensuring that you have created a way that all of those areas are supervised, or at least has the perception of being supervised, is very, very helpful. So half walls instead of full walls. Try to avoid separating by floor, putting the production area with line of sight to the prep area rather than the back door so you can see people working in there. It's just really helpful. Now, we've looked at this one already, but I will show it one more time. So what you're looking at when you're designing your back of house area is 3 different major flow areas, or flow motions. First one's being the employees, because they're going to walk around and they're going to, for the most part, use all the different areas of the kitchen. The food, from the dock to the storage to prep to service. We talked about that. And then also the dishes coming back in from the dishwashing, or going to the dishwashing area from the service floor. Now this one here we've looked at, and I want you to just kind of keep that, really open this up when you're doing your design, because it really lays out perfectly the relation all these different things should have. So your back door to your receiving area, this is where you count everything, make sure it's all good, you check your invoices, you have all the items that you've ordered, then you store them in your dry or your fridge or your freezer. Your pre-prep, as we mentioned, your final prep, hot line, cold line, Then it goes out to the dining room on the service floor. It's eaten, comes back into the dishwashing area. So when you think about that, the first thing in the indoor in the kitchen from the dining room should be very, very close to where your dishwasher area is. Because I'm holding lots of plates and I don't want to carry them forever. So I should be able to walk in and drop them off fairly quickly. And then a lot of there's some waste, and that'll go back into the back door. So here's your receiving area. It's a small one. It's 8 feet by 8 feet. Should allow for hand dollies or hand trucks and dollies. Larger areas, you could have huge doors. It depends on what kind of space. If you're the hospital, you have huge receiving areas. If you're a 60 seat, 80 seat, 100 seat restaurant, it's probably smaller, like similar to what we're looking at here. It's often helpful to have a table and a scale because a lot of times we order things in pounds. So we want to weigh them, and then the table, you can put up items, open them up, well lit, check invoices, things like that. I would send back things, not maybe every shipment, but specifically with produce and often with seafood, I would send things back probably 50% of the time because they give me a beautiful flat of tomatoes, and then the 3 flats below them were full of ones that were either green or started to rot and had some mold on it. So you just got to be careful with that. This just gives you an idea of some of the different storage areas. So you can see all the dry storage, everything's lifted up off the ground. It's somewhat organized, it's labeled. There should be a FIFO, first in, first out system happening. And this is, I think we've talked about this in some of your food and beverage courses. From a design perspective, here are 2 or 3 different options. This one here is a 96 square foot little small area. It's basically enough. So as we said, our doors are, I think I said, were 30 inches. So it's just like 36 inches that you can go in here. You have shelving on all sides, and it works very well. And then on the right-hand side here, you can see a 225 square foot dry storage. This is also fridge. This is also freezer. All of these are very similar in design. Now, the only difference that they did between these two is that the one has only 3 feet, so that's more than enough for a human walking in. This one has 4 feet, which allows for those big moving dollies of food. So sometimes people have those. All restaurants should have a cleaning supply closet. Now, from a bird's eye perspective, when we're doing a design, it really doesn't look like anything. It just looks like a cleaning closet. But there should be the availability of that. And then when it comes down to refrigeration, we have to think of a few things. So it's very similar design to what we thought about, or what we looked at just now, where we were looking at the dry storage. Larger places sometimes will have 3 separate fridges and then their freezers. If you're looking at a McDonald's or something along those lines, they'll probably have more freezer space than fridge space because they bring in a lot of frozen goods, already processed goods. But typically 3 separate fridges for large ones are great because we keep our produce at a different temperature than we do our dairy and eggs, as we do our meat and poultry. So here's a couple different ideas. These are like a fridge and freezer combo, and these are kind of like the walk-in or the open up that you can put stuff in there as well as get behind. It really all depends. Often you'll see like bars have these kind of setups, or grocery store chains. Here's some more designs for it to give you an idea of all of your different options. Sometimes the cooler will then walk into the freezer, so the fridge, and then through the fridge you walk into the freezer. Sometimes they're beside each other, and you can really kind of create however you want. It's really up to you. Okay. Dishwashing areas. Very, very important space. There's a couple things you need to have. So first of all is a 3-compartment sink. So typically your dishwasher does this for you: the soak, the wash, the rinse, and the sanitize. Now, at a certain temperature. But we can't always rely on dishwashers to always work. So sometimes if they break or they fail or you run out of cleaner or whatever it might be, we always have to have a 3-compartment sink by law in that area. You might need drying and hanging racks. It should be well lit and noise and moisture controlled. and I can show you a couple layouts of them. It should be located close to the entrance from the dining room. So as I mentioned, you're carrying a lot of dirty plates in from the dining room. You want them to be quite easily put down. Lots of table space. So 60% of your table space will be for dirty dishes, 40% for clean. A glass washer is fantastic. Often you'll have your glass washer up at the bar and not back in the dishwashing area, but sometimes you'll have it back there as well. Usually we use a hose and nozzle system. So that's basically like you grab it and you pull it down and you can spray all your different food off your plates. It's not great for resource conservation because it uses a lot of water, but it works really well. And then sometimes having oversized sinks are great as well for all your big pots and pans that you need to soak. So this gives you an idea right here. They walk up, they drop all their dishes in this particular area. There's a silver soak sink, so that's all your cutlery. This is the guy's nozzle, so he sprays off all of the stuff, puts it in these trays, and it goes through. And this looks like it's a 3-step machine where there's a pre-wash and then 2 tank of washing. So it goes through like 2 washing cycles. And then it comes out, and again, they're all on these big trays, and they just kind of go back out here. So the trays will go up in the storage racks, or the dishes get taken off the trays and go into dish racks. Works really well. And then when someone needs more dishes, they just roll the rack out. It's kind of an enclosed whole system. Here's a 3D view of something very similar. So what the other picture before didn't have was the 3-sink system. So here you'll see that there. But again, very simple. Soiled dishes, dirty cups, they go through, they come back out, and then they're put on some sort of tray, and you have your 3-sink system as well. And depending on the size, it kind of gives you an idea of based on how many dishes per hour you have to do, and these are kind of like an extreme amount of numbers here, but you can get a lot of different size of dishwashers. These one-offs aren't fantastic because they're not very quick. So a system like this is much better, but even better are the ones that are based on the conveyor system, which basically you tuck them in and then they slowly start pulling them through and washing them, because it's just less work for the dishwasher. And this is a huge system here that does many, many, many dishes. So other than that, you're more or less set to start designing your back of house. So you will have the assignment instructions shortly. They will be under assignments and tests in a video with them. There are other areas, and I don't believe I ask you to do these back of house staff areas or back of house washrooms, but there are things that we need to understand. We've talked about this before. We need spaces for our employees to be able to rest and relax at work. So they need their own washrooms. You may need an office for reviewing invoices, doing computer work, trash and waste storage, and maybe just some hand washing areas. So I've given you a little bit of information that could work for some of these areas that you might want to include if you have the space, and maybe what a hand washing little area looks like. And then, of course, what maybe some of the garbage receptacle area will look like as well. Okay, so I won't go into too much detail on that. You need to understand about them, but I'm going to require you to do little design because a lot of this is kind of out of your control. So that's it for the lesson here today. So that was about 33 minutes. That should start you off quite nicely into looking at a back of house design. Now, if you're still watching and you haven't stopped the video, you can always look up layouts of back of house designs to also get some ideas. You can't take them, but you can definitely look at them and say, okay, I see what they did there. That will be helpful, and also give you some more tools to work with when you're doing that major project. So thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you at lunch on Tuesday. I'm going to be better by then, I promise. And then on the week 11, what we will do is that we'll have time in class for those who want to come in, and we will go through some of the back of house design Visio stuff with you then. Have a great week.